I want to start this morning. We're beginning a new series. I want you to think about someone in your life who just really understood you. Someone who just gets you, right? And maybe right now, or maybe they're no longer in your life, or maybe they've passed on, but someone who understood you better than anyone. Take a moment to think about that. It's interesting when you ask this question to teenagers, they will point to maybe a family member, an uncle, or a friend, a neighbor, a teacher, who was able to just look at them and really understand them. I was in grade 8. Scrawny little kid. I was always I was always sitting in the front row, and, with all the girls in the class pictures. Hated it. Grade 8, and I was visiting my grandparents in a small town in Veteran, Alberta, central Alberta. And that's where a number of my relatives were. We were there over a weekend, and my cousins were all going to a youth group event with the church that's a part of this little community. This community has about 300 people in it. Yet the church gathers, I swear, from like Red Deer. Because it was a big church. It was so hard to believe. But anyways, I come into this youth group. And there's all these kids in this room. I was like quite surprised. I was expecting just a little gathering. All these kids. And I'm nervous. My cousins were older than me. I walk into this room and, insecure. I was wanting to stay close to my cousin. I was hoping he wasn't going to abandon me. And this guy looks across the room and he says, "Hey." And he's pointing at me. And I look at him and I go, "Hey." I thought, uh-oh, I'm not supposed to be here or something. I don't know why he's pointing at me. He goes, "You're Myron's cousin." I said, "Yeah." He says, "You're from Calgary." I said, "Yeah." He says, "Well, let me meet you." He says, "You have sisters?" I said, "Yeah." It was like he was performing street magic. I was like, "How did you," in this group of people, all of a sudden all these kids are kind of turning and looking at me. And it wasn't doing it in an embarrassing way, but he was making me feel like I was somebody, like everyone should know who I am. I was like, wow. And over the course of this evening, his name was Brian Fuller. He was a youth pastor. He would all walk up to me every now and then. He'd say, "So how long have you been in Calgary? You were there?" He says, "Just wait. Your parents are divorced, right? Am I right?" And I'm like, how are you, where are you pulling your information? He's like this weird interviewer that just had done all this research on me. And he says, "You live with your mom?" I said, "Yeah." He's like, "Great. You get along well with your dad?" "Yeah." He said, "You see him very often?" I said, not a lot." He's like, "Bet that's tough." We had this conversation in the middle of this big event that left me like, well, here I am 30-some years later telling you about the conversation this guy had with me in grade 8 in central Alberta. It left such a mark on me. This guy, in such a short amount of time, got into my life and made me feel so seen. This is the kind of thing I'm asking you about. Who has done that for you? Is there someone who has been able to just look into your world and learn a lot about you and actually care about it? When was the last time you truly felt understood by someone? What did they do to make you feel that way? What kind of questions did they ask you? What did they notice about you? Have you ever had someone just all of a sudden, in the middle of everything going on, notice, hey, you okay? And it's like they're seeing into your world while everyone else is missing it. And you look at them and maybe you say, I'm okay. And they're going, no, I can tell. You had that? Or someone says, I heard, congratulations on the new job. They just, all of a sudden, it's like they are shining a light on your life and on your world. And it's like that's all that matters to them right now. How does that feel? Now, I know there's some introverts in here saying, I don't like the spotlight. I don't like anyone making me. No, I'm not talking about everyone, look at this. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about someone in their own magical way being able to look in your life and make you feel seen and heard and understood. I remember driving back from Calgary, my mom asking me, how was your weekend, Jeff? And I just said, it was unreal. And we had done a lot that weekend, but all I was thinking about was that conversation with Brian Fuller. When I read the stories of Jesus, I think Jesus had that Brian Fuller superpower. Like he just had this ability to just lock in to individuals, the stories of the way that he could zone out everything else. And it was just like, I see you. One day, all his disciples, all his right-hand men, they all went to town to get some groceries. Jesus is there at a well. Well, the wells where they would pull up water, pretty popular spots. Back in that day, no indoor plumbing. I mean, it was, you needed water and the heat. So he's there, and there happens to be a woman there. And Jesus asks the woman if she could draw him some water. The woman takes a look at Jesus and is shocked that he's even talking to her. You see, she was a Samaritan. She's looking at Jesus. Somehow she knows he's a Jew, he's Jewish, and she's taken back. Like, why are you even talking to me? Back in that day, a Jewish person talking to a Samaritan would be probably like a Jewish person today talking to a Palestinian in just casual conversation. Hey, man, what's going on? Tension. The Jewish people saw Samaritans as foreigners, didn't give them the time of day. And here's Jesus talking to this woman and asking her, could you draw me some water? She's so surprised, she goes, I can't believe you're talking to me. I'm a Samaritan. And Jesus steps right past that statement and says, actually, if you knew me, you might be wise to be asking me to get you some water. Only the water I would give you is living water. The water I would offer you, you would take and you would never thirst again. Now, a lot of people want to start ascribing all this theological meaning to what he meant by living water and this is what he was offering. Just for a second, let's just set that aside. You have a Jewish man who's looking into the eyes of a Samaritan woman saying, I think I have something that could help you. Not only is he talking to her, he's saying, actually, I would like to help you. She's not sure where he's going with all of this, but you can tell she's excited. She's like, tell me more about this living water. Tell me, and how do I? He just said, I want you to go home, and I want you to tell your husband the things that I've told you. She looks at him and says, I'm not married. He says, you're right. You're not married. You've been married 5 times. And now the guy you're living with, you're not married to. like street magic, And so again, a lot of people read this story and go, oh man, Jesus had these. Focus away from the superpowers and how he would know all those details. And what you have is a guy who's willing to look into this Samaritan woman's eyes and saying, I see you. I know who you are. You're not invisible to me. You matter. Not in a judgmental way, not in a, I know you're dirty. No. Something in the way that Jesus said all this stuff left this woman invigorated. She went running home, excited. Jesus just had a way of doing this. He did this with children. Children, there'd be parents wanting to come up and have Jesus even just bless them. And there'd be his followers pushing them away, saying, come on, he's got more important things. And Jesus would go, whoa, 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 whoa. No, stop. Bring them here. Bring here, I see you. There would be leper colonies, people who had leprosy. It's so infectious disease that they would literally remove them from society and leave them in this colony. And Jesus would go and he would see them. He would spend time near them. I see you. You're not invisible to us. You exist and you matter. There'd be lame people who would sit at the entrance to these buildings, and you don't know how many days they'd be sitting there begging for money, and people would just walk right by them, just like we can do on days when we're downtown, and you see people walking, and you just walk right by. You just, this is uncomfortable. You just keep walking, and Jesus would see him. See these people offering to help them. Look at me, he says, I see you right there. What's your name? Oh. Even some of the most insidious characters of their society, the people of poor repute, a guy named Zacchaeus, no one wanted to have anything. The Jewish people didn't want to have anything to do with this guy because he was just this corrupt, shady tax collector. Jesus is talking one day, big crowd of people. Zacchaeus, small little guy, climbs this tree. And there's a story of Jesus looking up at Zacchaeus, noticing him. He says, I see you, pal. Not only that, he says, how about we go for lunch? Jesus had this way of making people feel seen. He would take those people that felt like wallpaper in their worlds, like no one could see them, and he would just say, shine this warm light on them and say, there you are, come here. They'd be going, yeah, you, come on. They'd be like, are you kidding me? You see me? He's like, come here, I see you. You matter. You are not invisible. You are a real person with real things going on. Come on, you're important. Come on, I want to talk to you. In his book, How to Know a Person, a guy named David Brooks, he calls people with this ability to see people, he calls them illuminators. It's like they have this ability to just shine the light and say, wait a second. I think I know you better now. Wait a second. What's your family like? Where did you come from? Where did you go to school? Did you grow up in the Northwest? Shining a warm light, going, I just want to know more about you. Who are you? David Brooks calls these people illuminators. In his book, he says this ability to see people is a universal skill set that cultures love. People have benefited from it. They're going, in fact, he points out the Koreans, they have a word called nunchi. It's the name they ascribe to the ability one has to be sensitive to the other person's moods and thoughts. where you can look at a person and go, oh, something's up. You okay? You look happy. What's going on? The Germans use the word Herzenbildung. If you're German in here and I butchered that, forgive me. This is the skill of training one's heart to see the full humanity in another. Oh, I love that. Training one's heart to see the full humanity in another person. Oh. Around here, we're recognizing more and more that this art form of seeing people, hearing them, understanding how they tick, their passions, their weaknesses, investigating to understand what's making them tick is one of the most spiritual things we can do. To learn the topics or the past events in a person's life that are sensitive or raw. When you say something and someone bristles and they don't want to talk about it, these people pick up on it. They're going, something must have happened there. We'll set that aside. We'll come back maybe at some point. To be able to name the greatest hopes a person has in dreams. When someone says, we want to throw a party for so-and-so, what should we do? And someone says, I know exactly what they would love. They love this and love this. What kind of, they love this music. This is their favorite movie. What could we do? Oh, to have someone that has taken the time and investigated to say, I got a good bead on who this person is. When we do this well, folks, this has the power to melt hearts that are hard. It can breathe the life into a person that is gasping for air in the midst of their dark world. It can part the clouds and shine light on them, just giving them a moment of relief. Putting a smile on a kid's face when all of a sudden someone looks at them and says, hey, you like doing this stuff? So do I. Someone validating who they are. If you've ever felt truly known by someone, seen by someone, illuminated by someone, you know exactly what I'm talking about. This is powerful, powerful water you can take to someone's world. Over the next few weeks, we're going to talk about the specific skill sets of illuminators. What it is they do to do this powerfully. We're going to borrow a lot of it from this guy. Great book, by the way. We've had people say, when you recommend a book, make sure we can see it. So I'm just going to do one of these, all right? No excuses now. You know what I'm talking about. Because we can learn to do this better. I'll tell you this right now. I can learn to do this better. Sadly, in our world today, there isn't a lot of illuminating going on. Author David Brooks would say that we are witnessing and experiencing probably much toxic levels of the opposite. What he calls diminishing. This is where things we do and say can make people feel even more invisible than they already maybe feel. This was a sad chapter as I was reading through it. I'm just like, oh no. Especially as I read through it and I started recognizing things I was doing. I was at a function a little while ago, and there was a great aunt who was reunited with her great niece. Does that make sense? Great niece. So this great aunt has family over in Australia. She hasn't seen many of them for many, many years. But this great niece she hasn't seen since she was like. So we were there when all of a sudden they were united. And they gave each other a big hug. They knew who each other was, but they hadn't really seen each other face to face. So this woman is like 28, the great niece is. And she hasn't seen her since she was like maybe 3 or 4. So they come together. And a few of us are standing around. We're kind of, wow, this is cool. This is great. And so this great niece gives her great aunt a big hug, and then she stands back and looks at her. Her great aunt is quite tall. She says, "It is freaky. When I look at you, you look so much like my grandmother." Now, the great niece's grandmother is sisters to her great aunt. And she's just like going, when you smile, when you talk, it's like my grandmother's talking. And as she's saying this, the great aunt kills me. She starts to cry. And I'm like, why the tears? And she couldn't compose herself. She's just like, I'm sorry. And in the middle of this celebration, she says, "My dad always told me I was the ugly one. So when you tell me that I look like what I always thought was my beautiful sister and I was the ugly duckling, I'm having a tough time computing." People right away just start, "Are you kidding me? You're so beautiful." She's going, she just felt so uncomfortable. She goes, "My dad just," she started telling stories around her dad. She says, her dad was a military guy. She said, around my dad, kids were meant to be seen and not heard. You never fussed. You never complained. You never got too excited. You were to be quiet. She said, "I felt completely invisible to my dad." Oh. That is an extreme form of diminishing. Maybe some of us have felt that in some ways. But diminishing, it can take shape in little, really subtle forms. Like I was talking to a guy from Saskatchewan the other day. Poor kid. No, I'm joking. That is so. He's been in Calgary for about a year. And I just asked him, I said, "Where are you from?" It was a small town in Saskatchewan. I said, "How are you adjusting to the big lights and the hectic pace?" He says, "It's okay. It's just," at one point he says, "It's hard because I feel like an outsider. It's hard feeling like an outsider." I said, "Oh, really? You haven't been able to make," he says, it's been tricky because it seems like everyone has friends or has family and he says it's just hard when people are into their own thing. It's hard kind of breaking in. He didn't say it, but he could have. He said, "I just feel invisible to them." At one point he said, "I have been working with some people for 6 months, and they've never asked me a personal question about myself." You want invisible? Sometimes it's just the act of omission. Not being curious enough to look at someone who you're working with and say, "Hey, where are you from? Or what's going on over there?" I was upstairs in our bonus room where I have an office set up, and I work from home a few days a week typically. And I was up there, and Kathy, my wife, and my one son were downstairs. And I couldn't hear very well, but I could hear enough to hear the conversation. My son asked Kathy how her week had been going. And I was just working away, but Kathy began to open up with Carter and began to share about her week. And as she did, I found myself being surprised. Because Kathy had been having a tough week. There were a number of different things she began to share with my son. I didn't even know. And I remember at one point, I lost track of what I was doing there in that moment. Because I was so out of touch with what my wife, my partner, my soulmate was going through that week. I began to think about it, thinking, how many conversations have we had all week long? And I was either about business or talking about stuff I was doing or what that I had failed to see what Kathy was going through. You know, here's the thing about being a diminisher. You don't have to be an evil person. You don't have to be someone who just doesn't give a rat's ass about someone. You can be a diminisher towards someone you love deeply without even knowing it. We can be diminishers and be clueless that we're doing it. You know, we live in a day and age where we should be able to make people around us feel so known, so seen. I mean, we have no excuse, do we? I mean, in the technological day and age that we live in today, if someone isn't right in front of us, we got text, we got Skype, Zoom, FaceTime. We got social media. Someone's posting something, we can see it right there, literally in real time. We've got so much access to anyone at any time, in any part of the world, literally. Where to see someone, literally, they are right there. And yet, stats tell us that it's happening less and less than ever. More and more people feeling isolated, alienated, invisible. I was reading through some stats on this. David Brooks pointing it out, chapter 8. One survey he pointed to, big survey. 54% of all the people they surveyed reported personally that no one knows them well. That means over 1 in 2 people in this room right now feel invisible. That shocked me. One other stat, 36% of those polled, so over 1 in 3, reported that they felt lonely frequently or almost all of the time. Loneliness is that sense of invisibility, that sense that no one sees me, no one is concerned about what I'm doing, no one's reaching, we're not connecting. We are one of the most isolated, disconnected, distracted, and unknown people groups in human history. You just think about that for a second. You think about all the kids right now, from very young through teenager land into young adults that feel invisible, not just to friends, but often to their own caregivers. You think about the friends, you think about the neighbors, you think about the coworkers who right now just feel like they don't matter to others. And what's tragic is we can be exacerbating this, doing this, without even knowing it, creating that sense. So this morning, in just a few minutes that I have left, I just want to mention a few behaviors that we can be doing without even realizing it. Author David Brooks points to egotism as one culprit. It's just this self-absorbed nature, being involved in our own stories. It's the extreme version of being caught in our I. We talk about I and they coming together to form a we. When you get too immersed in the I, you do not see the other people in your world. I was golfing with a guy a little while back. I was golfing with one guy, and then there was a twosome we were joined up with. One of the others, this guy was caught up in the I, heavy. Man, he had stories he could tell you about himself. He had lots of them. He would get up there and hit the ball and just wait for the compliments. He loved that. When his ball got lost, it was like he was looking at everyone else, like, why is not everyone here looking for my ball? But yet, another person would hit a stray ball. It was the last thing on his mind. He was over here checking his phone, cleaning his clubs. People would say, did you see my ball? No, no, he never saw anyone's ball. At one point, it was like, enough about me, he would say. Enough about me. Why don't you take a turn and talk about me? It's like, buddy, I think I've had enough of you after 9 holes. How often, let me ask you, are you willing to just set aside what's going on in your own world? Your stories, your passions, your excitement, your achievements, your plans, and look at someone and say, I want to just talk to you. Tell me about your day. What's going on there? I saw that move you made. That was awesome. How often do you just say, time out on me? Let's talk about you. Another diminishing behavior. I'll tell you that I could score 10 out of 10 on all these ones. This is so embarrassing. It's like, oh man, I've done that. Another diminishing behavior closely related to egotism is the lesser mind's perspective. The lesser mind's perspective. University of Chicago prof asked his business school students, why are you going into business? Number one common answer, I care about doing something worthwhile. That's the reason for going into business. I want to do something meaningful. I want to do something I believe in. Great. Why do you think everyone else is going into business? For the money. Number one answer, they're going into it for the money. He began to realize, this is a pattern. He began to notice this common perception that one is much more complicated than others. I'm a little more nuanced. I'm a little deeper. I'm a little more interesting. I'm more subtle. I'm more high-minded. So let's hurry and get through your story so we can get on to the good stuff. I know none of you would ever do that. But I'm just saying it, just to remind you. When we can get this syndrome going on, you can watch it happen. Because rather than listening, you're already thinking about what you're going to say next. You can find yourself not expecting to learn anything from the person you're talking to. You're just waiting for them to stop so that you can enlighten them a little. Because you're a higher mind. And if you've ever felt that, you know exactly what I'm talking about. How often do you listen in on someone saying, help me learn something here. I think you've got something I really need. There's something about you that I'm really fascinated by. How often do you allow fascination to take over in someone else? For some, it's not egotism. It's not the lesser mind syndrome, it's anxiety. Anxiety gets in the way. I was thinking of a family way back when I was a youth pastor. Their teenage daughter was in trouble. She was acting up. I could tell things were off when she would come out and get involved in the different things that we're putting on. She was having some trouble with friends at school, a little bit of bullying going on. She started making some poor decisions with some guys, the kind of guys she's spending time with. I had a couple of her friends saying, we're really worried about her. So I reached out to her parents. I just said, hey, I'm just wondering how she's doing. I was expecting them to have some concern, but rather than concern, there was anger. They were pissed off with their daughter. She's not listening to us. She's making all these stupid decisions. And now there's people coming to us. She's making us look like terrible parents. I know she's doing this on purpose. Now, please understand, I can score 10 out of 10 on this one. I'm not pointing the fingers. But I remember looking at them going, oh my God, this girl feels so unseen by you. She knows you don't know her world. She knows you have no clue what she's really struggling with, and you are not willing to lean in, to set aside your anxieties and your fears and all the insecurities that this is stirring up to just see this person. Let me ask you a question. How easily can you quiet your own emotions and your own mental noise and the anxiety perhaps you feel, the stress you feel, to just set it aside, compartmentalize it for a second, to be able to look into the life of another? Let me move on. There's another behavior that creates diminishers. It's a diminishing quality. It's called naive realism. This is the assumption that the way the world appears to you is the way the world works. Have you ever come across someone like that? I was in a conversation the other day, and a real diverse group. I knew there's about 5 of us, and there's two people that didn't really know the other 2 very well. And so anyways, I was just introducing whatever, we start chatting. One person comes out and just makes this big, bold, brash political statement. Very opinionated. And I'm like, I'm thinking, you don't know these 2. I don't think they share that same opinion. But anyways, I'm just like, okay, give me some popcorn. I can't wait to see what happens here. But this person is talking like everyone in the room is nodding their head. Like they're talking, expecting the nods, head nods. That's naive realism. When how you believe, how you think, you believe everyone thinks and sees what you see. Your subjective truth is objective truth, and everyone should see it. That's how this guy was not. And I'm like, uh-oh. Then at one point, this person in the discussion politely pushed back. Said, I think we'll have to agree to disagree. And this is how I see it. Laid out a completely different argument. And that person was like, number one, shocked that this person wasn't going along with it. But all of a sudden it was like, oh, dynamos. This is well thought out. Now, rocked back on his feet. I'm just thinking, this is the kind of thing. Now, that person was strong enough to speak up and say, I don't agree. But how many people will that guy have conversations with on an ongoing basis where people just smile and step back? And that person would never know what they're really thinking. Invisible. You don't really see me. You don't really know me. Naive realism. Last one I'll mention, and then I'm done, is objectivism. This is a tendency we have to label and stereotype people, to simplify people into categories. Someone tells you a story. Oh, I went and watched this movie. I loved it. And you go, oh, you loved that movie. Oh, you're one of those. Oh, you vote that way. Oh, okay. Oh, you're opposed to that. Oh, I know your type. Don't get me wrong. Market researchers and pollsters and social scientists, they poll people and they extract big trends. That's great if you're a social scientist or if you're a pollster. But when you quickly categorize people and label people quickly based on something they say and do, it's a terrible way to see an individual. Because how many know each one of you are such a uniquely nuanced individual person that doesn't just believe one thing and the same as everyone else that believes that one thing? No. You're way more complicated than that. You're way more nuanced than that. I hate it when people say, are you this or that? I go, that's tricky. Because if I say this, then you're going to put me in it. No, but there's parts of that I think I am. There's parts of that I'm not. Objectivism really sees the world in very dualistic terms and says, let's slap a label on you. Have you ever done one of those personality tests? And then when you come out, someone says, oh, what were you? And you say, oh, here's my number. Oh, I know your type. And you're going, F off. You don't know me. Sorry. That was strong. These are tendencies of diminishers, and we can be doing them without even realizing it. I just want to remind everyone, man, I'm good at diminishing people. I hate it, and I'm learning. I'm seeing it quicker. But boy, I look at some of these things, I'm going, this is easy to do that. But I don't want to. I want to be an illuminator. I want to be a Brian Fuller. I want to be like Jesus that leaves people walking into wherever part of my life, whether it's my neighbor, the Costco cashier, where they feel seen and known and important. And I'm betting you do too. And if we want to take water, this is the stuff that we can do. This week, would you identify some diminishing quality that you have been exhibiting? Maybe it's one of these. Maybe you got caught up in your own story a little too much, and you got to stop talking. Maybe you got to quit labeling. Maybe you got to be more curious. I don't know what it is. But I hope this week, we got a community lunch right now. We got a perfect opportunity. Practice. I'm going to go around catching anyone that's not. No, I'm joking. No. I pray that you'll be less of a diminisher this week. I'm going to be. And over the next few weeks, we're going to help raise the level of illumination. This community is going to become one of the most curious, open-minded, warm spotlighting people around. You're going to leave people going, I had this craziest conversation with this guy named Jerry the other day. Man, that guy, he just locked in on me. I felt so good. I pray that for every one of you this week. I pray that your family, the moments that you've got with the friends, the neighbors in your life this week, go, that felt nice. Yeah. May we do a little less diminishing, a little more illuminating.